We're all taught that religion is a cornerstone of morality, a force for good that provides community, purpose, and ethical guidance for our children. This is the narrative reinforced by schools during holiday events, by courts upholding religious freedoms, and by the very fabric of our society. It's presented as an unquestionable good, a safe harbor. We trust these institutions implicitly. We hand our children over, believing they will be protected, nurtured, and given a solid moral foundation. But when you actually look at the history, the data, the patterns, a disturbing and undeniable reality emerges across every major faith. Something strange happens, something deeply concerning. When absolute belief systems interface with the most vulnerable and developing minds, what if the very mechanisms designed to save souls are also perfectly engineered for exploitation? What if the patterns we dismiss as isolated scandals are actually a predictable, systemic outcome? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the 3 core reasons why this happens. Not because of a few bad people, but because of a built-in blueprint. We're going to uncover the psychological playbook, the structural lock-in, and the ultimate authority transfer that creates this undeniable pattern. If you're ready to see the hidden blueprint for yourself, make sure you're subscribed right now. This is just the surface. That systemic outcome I mentioned starts not with some evil master plan, but with a simple developmental fact. A child's brain is the most perfect belief receiver ever created. From birth, their survival depends on trusting the adults around them without question. This credulity is a biological feature, not a bug. It's how they learn language, avoid danger, and navigate the world. But this same survival mechanism, this inherent trust, becomes the perfect entry point for doctrines they cannot possibly analyze. Neuroscience and developmental psychology are clear on this. Children under the age of 7 or 8 lack the cognitive ability for abstract critical thought. They cannot analyze a metaphysical claim. They can't deconstruct the concept of an invisible, all-seeing entity or a place of eternal fire. They can only accept it as fact. And this is where the first mechanism engages: the manufacturing of core beliefs before a defense system is ever installed. Think about it. We teach them math with numbers, science with experiments, history with evidence, but we often teach them religion with ultimatums. Consider the concept of hell not as a theological debate for scholars, but as information given to a 4-year-old. Imagine being told that a single wrong thought, a moment of disobedience, could condemn you to a nightmare of endless, agonizing fire, not for a time, but forever. That isn't a moral lesson. For a mind that can't distinguish between literal and metaphorical, that is a psychological reality. It creates a background radiation of anxiety, a deep-seated fear that is impossible to logic away, because it was installed before logic was ever formed. Or consider the doctrine of original sin. You wouldn't tell a newborn they are inherently flawed, inherently guilty for simply existing. But that is precisely the starting point many children are given. They are taught they are broken, and that only one specific path can fix them. This is the psychological playbook. It's not about teaching children how to think. It's about telling them what to think during the one window in their lives where they are neurologically programmed to accept it without resistance. It's the inoculation of belief before the immune system of critical thinking has a chance to develop. But programming the mind is only step one. To make that belief permanent, to make it stick for a lifetime, the system needs to do more. It needs to control the very environment that child lives in, creating an entire world where doubt is not just discouraged, but becomes psychologically dangerous. That's where the real lock-in begins. And that's where the structure comes in. If you can make a child afraid to doubt, the next logical step is to make it impossible for them to be exposed to doubt. This is where belief moves from the mind into the architecture of daily life. It becomes a system of control. The first pillar is isolation, physical and social isolation from the outside world. This isn't just about living in a religious community. It's about systematically severing ties to any competing worldview. Think about the homeschooling mandates in some ultra-conservative movements, where the approved curriculum teaches a literal 6-day creation and dismisses evolution as a lie. Or the strict rules in communities like the Amish, where Rumspringa isn't a true free choice. It's a controlled exposure to a world they've been taught is sinful and dangerous, making their own community seem like the only safe haven. It's the prohibition against having outsider friends, because those friends might ask questions. They might plant a seed of doubt. The second pillar is information control. This is the censorship of anything that contradicts the doctrine. It's the vilification of secular science, of universities, of any media that isn't produced by the church itself. The outside world isn't presented as an alternative. It's presented as a corrupting influence, a temptation. But the most powerful pillar is the social cost. This is the implicit and explicit threat that holds the entire structure together, the threat of losing everything. In religions like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have a formal practice called disfellowshipping. If you leave or even question the faith too loudly, you are shunned. Your own family, your parents, your siblings are doctrinally required to cut you off completely. You become dead to them. That isn't just social pressure, that is emotional annihilation. And here's where it gets truly disturbing. The legal system often can't help. In fact, it often enables this trap. Courts, bound by powerful religious freedom protections, frequently side with the institution. We've seen custody battles where one parent leaves a faith and loses visitation rights because the court rules the child should have religious stability. We see religious exemption laws that allow parents to deny their children life-saving medical treatments with no legal consequence. The child is trapped, their body and mind held hostage by a belief system they did not choose. The system is designed to make leaving unthinkable. The price is simply too high. You lose your family, your community, your entire identity. You are left with nothing. So you have a captive audience, psychologically primed and structurally locked in. This creates the perfect condition for the final and most devastating step. This perfect environment, this closed system, executes a silent coup on the most fundamental protective relationship in existence, the relationship between a child and their parent. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the role of ultimate protector is transferred. It moves from the parent, who is supposed to act in the child's best interest, to the religious institution, which must act in its own best interest. And this creates the fatal conflict. the exploitable gap. It begins with doctrine, the teaching that religious authority is not just equal to parental authority, but supersedes it, because that authority comes directly from God. A child is taught that disobeying the church is disobeying God himself. Think about the story of Abraham and Isaac, held up as a model of faith. The message is devastatingly clear. Your duty to God trumps your duty to protect your own child. Obedience, unquestioning obedience, is the highest virtue. This isn't ancient history. This plays out in modern confessionals every day. Consider the seal of confession. In Catholicism, a priest who hears a child's confession of abuse, even if the abuser is another priest, is bound by canon law to absolute secrecy. He cannot go to the police. He cannot warn the parents. The institution's rule forbids him from performing the most basic human duty of protecting a child. The child's safety is literally less important than the church's secrecy. Now, follow this logic to its horrifying conclusion. Put yourself in the mind of that child, the one we psychologically primed in Section 2. If you are being abused by a religious figure, someone who represents this ultimate authority, who do you tell? Your parents? But you've been taught that the priest, the pastor, the elder speaks for God. To accuse him is to accuse God. You would be betraying your faith. You might risk your very soul. And the parent? Their indoctrination is just as complete. To question the institution is to question the foundation of their entire reality, to risk eternal damnation. The social cost we talked about, it applies to them too. They face shunning, the collapse of their world. So even if a parent has a flicker of doubt, the system is designed to crush it. The institution positions itself as the ultimate arbiter of truth, and the parent's role is reduced to enforcing the institution's will upon the child. The parent becomes a proxy, a middle manager for the belief system. Their natural instinct to protect is hijacked. It's redirected toward protecting the child from the outside world and protecting the institution from any threat, even if that threat is the truth about what's happening inside. This is the mechanism laid bare. The child is taught to fear eternal punishment more than immediate harm. The parent is taught to value doctrinal loyalty above their child's well-being. And the institution holds all the keys. It creates a perfect hierarchy of silence, where the victim is silenced by fear, the parents are silenced by dogma, and the abuser is protected by a system more concerned with its own reputation than with the lives it destroys. And when this ultimate authority is abused, when the silence is broken, the system doesn't crack. It circles the wagons. This isn't theoretical. We are not dealing in hypotheticals. We see the same exact playbook executed every single time a scandal breaks, regardless of the denomination. The response is so predictable, it might as well be a written manual. The first move is always denial. Flat, absolute denial. The accusations are dismissed as attacks on the faith, as lies spread by malicious outsiders. But when the evidence becomes undeniable, the strategy shifts to deflection. The problem is reframed. It's not a systemic issue. It's just a few bad apples. They isolate the incident to protect the entire orchard. And then we see the active protection of perpetrators. This is where the blueprint becomes visible for all to see. Look at the 2018 Pennsylvania grand jury report. a definitive document. It detailed how Catholic dioceses for decades systematically moved offending priests from parish to parish, like a monstrous game of chess. They sent them to new communities with fresh, unsuspecting congregations, with a clean slate. They were given letters of recommendation. The safety of children was never the priority. The priority was avoiding scandal, protecting the brand, or examine the findings of the Australian Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. It found that institutions, including the Jehovah's Witnesses, used internal judicial committees to handle allegations. These are secret, internal courts with no legal authority, designed to handle criminal acts as if they were mere sins, to be dealt with behind closed doors. The goal wasn't justice, it was containment. And when victims persist, the final weapon is deployed, attacking their credibility. They are called liars, money grubbers, sinners trying to tarnish something pure. The institution uses its immense moral authority to destroy the reputation of the very people it has already victimized. And if all else fails, they settle, quietly, with strict non-disclosure agreements that silence the victims and bury the truth. The money, often from the donations of the faithful, is used to buy silence, to protect the institution's reputation forever. This is not the behavior of a few rogue individuals. This is the behavior of an organization acting to preserve itself. It is a rational, if monstrous, response from a system that values its own survival above all else. The exploitation isn't a bug in the system. It is a feature that the system is designed to protect. So we're left with a terrifying question, one that goes far beyond any single scandal or any one religion. If the system is designed this way, from the psychological priming of children, to the structural lock-in, to the transfer of authority, and finally to this institutional circling of the wagons, is reform even possible? From the inside? The uncomfortable conclusion here isn't that all religious people are exploiters. Far from it. The vast majority are loving parents and dedicated community members. The real and far more unsettling conclusion is that the very nature of demanding unquestioning faith from developing minds creates a vulnerability that is simply irresistible to predators. And it creates a system that is impossible for the institution to police without fundamentally undermining its own foundation. Let's connect the dots one final time. We started with the vulnerable mind, the child's brain, engineered by evolution to trust, weaponized by doctrine to believe without question. We saw the controlled environment, the physical and social walls built to make doubt impossible and leaving unthinkable. We exposed the transferred authority, the silent coup that replaces a parent's protective instinct with institutional loyalty. And we just witnessed the protected institution, the self-preserving machine that circles its wagons, choosing its own survival over the lives of children. This is not a bad apples problem. This is a bad orchard problem. It is the soil, the fence, the very ecosystem that is designed to grow and protect rotten fruit. So we are left with the most difficult questions of all. How do we, as a society, protect children while simultaneously respecting belief? Is it time to challenge, not the people, but the specific doctrines and power structures that inherently conflict with fundamental child welfare? Can any system based on unquestioning authority ever be safe for the most vulnerable among us? This is the conversation we need to have. It's uncomfortable. It's controversial, but it is necessary. If this investigation made you think, made you see the pattern, then share this video to spark that conversation with others. And subscribe to this channel because we break down the topics everyone is afraid to talk about. The conversation starts now.